Widely heralded as the pinnacle of the dark fantasy genre, Berserk is one of the most underrated fictional works of the last 30 years. One topic that often comes up when talking about Berserk is the way that Kentaro Miura approaches sexuality from several perspectives, showcasing the ability to display true intimacy, give agency, take agency, enact rituals, incur resources, and display the outright depravity of human nature. The context, symbolism, and repercussions of sexuality within Berserk play pivotal roles in the narrative of the overall story. One of the primary focal points of how Miura conveys it is through the life of the protagonist, Guts. Guts was born from the womb of a woman who was hung from a tree. Being viewed as cursed from the day of his birth, he was taken in by Gambino, a ruthless mercenary, and his wife, Shisu. Shisu was the only nurturing aspect of this environment. Soon after being taken in by Gambino, Shisu, who pleaded with him to take in Guts, died from the plague. This instilled a deeply rooted resentment towards Guts. Gambino began to despise him and attribute every negative occurrence in his life from the moment that he met Guts to being his fault, placing on him a sense of hyper-agency, which patterned his life. Gambino devised the plan to passively terminate Guts when he taught him the art of swordplay, and placed him on the battlefield as a child mercenary. To the surprise of Gambino, Guts was naturally tenacious and viewed this as an opportunity to impress Gambino, the man who loathed him, but had been the closest thing to a father that he had ever known. Guts quickly began to improve, dedicating himself to the art of sword wielding and amassing earnings for himself on the battlefield. It was his only escape from his miserable reality. This drive made him progress quickly through the ranks of Gambino's band of mercenaries, which offended Gambino and caused him to want Guts to be humbled. He found an opportunity when Donovan, a fellow mercenary, offered Gambino 3 coins for a night with Guts. Guts tried his best to defend himself, but Donovan was much too strong, and Guts was unable to reach his sword. For years, the only touch that Guts would allow was violence. He had never known intimacy. It was scarier to him than the thought of risking his life on the battlefield. From this moment on, he was no longer able to sleep without his sword in his arms. The next time Guts would be seen experiencing non-violent physical touch was after being handily defeated by Griffith. Waking up from his defeat, Guts was afraid, separated from his sword for the first time in years, with Casca laying there at the behest of Griffith to keep his body warm. The words, "Don't touch me," were spoken in his sleep as they bandaged him and tended to his injuries. At this point in Guts' life, this was the most intimate he had ever been with a woman, but he had already killed dozens, if not hundreds of men. They fought gallantly, but Griffith overcame him once again, dislocating his shoulder, recruiting him to the band of the Hawk. After some years had gone by of Guts living, eating, sleeping, and fighting with the band of the Hawk, he had gotten much bigger and stronger. They had finally reached a place where they had begun to make political chess moves, meeting the King of Midland and becoming the ace up his sleeve during the Great War. As Guts returned from a mission where he inadvertently took innocent life for the first time, he was distraught, seeking Griffith to let him know that the mission was complete. Here, he stumbled upon Griffith uttering the words of what he considered a true friend, stating, "The man who would be my friend must have his own reason for living, beyond me, and he should put his heart and soul into protecting his dream. He should never hesitate to defend it, even against me. For me to call a man my friend, he must be equal to me in all aspects." This led to Guts having an existential crisis, where he realized that he had only lived to swing his sword, but that there was more to life. While others were celebrating a tremendous victory, Guts decided to go on his own journey to find himself. As he left, he was confronted by Griffith, who felt betrayed by Guts' desire to leave. Losing his typically poised demeanor, he would rather kill Guts in battle or risk his own life than to lose him, as he felt that he owned him. However, this duel would not transpire in the way that their previous duels had. In a single swing of his oversized sword, Guts broke Griffith's sword in half, stopping it before it touched his body, causing Griffith to feel emasculated in front of Casca and the other men. Seeing this, Casca felt a way that she never had. Having previously had unrequited love for Griffith, witnessing the inner strength of Guts to take life into his own hands exposed her to an attraction to Guts that she had never known. This culminated in Guts and Casca sharing an intimate moment, where Guts experienced consensual sex for the first time in his life, with his only sexual experience having been his molestation at the hands of Donovan. Guts inherently viewed sex as an act of violence and began to see himself as Donovan and Casca as himself. This broke him down to where he was crying uncontrollably. Casca comforted him and they proceeded to make love. Casca replaced his sword as his place of comfort, sleeping without his sword for the first time since he was a child. She became his sword. The final sexual experience of Guts in the Golden Age arc was one of a voyeuristic nature, to put it quaintly. The infamous eclipse. After finally having found purpose in his life, viewing the Band of the Hawk as the family he never had, and choosing to take the mantle as their new leader, the jealousy and resentment of Griffith held towards Guts came to a boil. Guts, the epitome of conventional masculinity, with nigh superhuman ability, had fought and defeated several supernatural beings, known as apostles, and wrote to seeing Casca, the woman he loved, stripped and humiliated while the filthy hands of several apostles appeared to commence unspeakable atrocities. Then Griffith emerged from his cocoon as Femto, stopping the apostles and giving a false sense of hope that Casca was saved from being violated. This was anything but the truth. Femto began to simulate intimacy, kissing and caressing Casca to arouse her. At times, the look on her face showing the flush of sexual arousal and lust mixed with the shock and disassociation of the man who taught her agency commencing to take what he had given. Reaching into the depths of her years of longing and desire, exerting his dominance while seeking to make this as pleasurable as possible, using her as a pawn to hurt Guts, wanting him to feel the same emasculation and shame that he felt as he saw his dream crumble before his own eyes. He used tentacles to hold her in place as he ravaged her whilst never removing his eyes from Guts. The same is how Guts never left Griffith's mind as he slept with Charlotte. Guts fought his hardest, in a great sense of pain and rage, seeking to stop and kill Femto. However, he lacked the strength to do so. Cutting his own arm to free himself from the jaws of an enormous apostle, only to be flung to the ground with an apostle's bird-like talon gouging his eye out, whilst the last image his eye would ever behold being the woman he loved, writhing in pleasure against her own will while carrying his child. One could only imagine the amalgamation of feelings that went through Guts' mind. The man he viewed as his best friend was ravishing the only woman he had ever loved and allowed close to him. In many ways, this could bring up negative emotions for Guts. He was a skilled warrior, but sexually inexperienced. He had made love to Casca after she cared for and comforted him in his moment of weakness, sharing true intimacy. This image would forever be contrasted with him viewing her experiencing pleasure and dominance that he would never be able to give her. The primal dominant nature of this instance eclipsing the shared passion of his experience with her, knowing that she did not choose this, but that she did enjoy it. He would have to contend with his desire to care for Casca, battle with his internal feelings of inadequacy in the face of a godlike figure, feel guilt about the ways that he would personalize what Casca had experienced because of his own ego, fight against the fact that she would become mentally broken, reverting back to a childlike mind, shoulder the burden of her associating him with her trauma, now mentally unable to be affectionate with him. He would have to contend with the desire to kill his child that had been corrupted by Femto, to run away and hide his shame, knowing he may never reach the level of intimacy with another woman, but not knowing if Casca would ever leave her fragile state of mind. Being a man of war, Guts dedicated himself to years of seeking to kill all the apostles that he would come in contact with, seeking to reclaim his masculinity the only way he had ever known, through violence, even using sex to lure apostles into opportunities to send them to the vortex of souls. Guts' sexual journey in the Golden Age arc was a tragic tale, which began with the taking of his own agency, to something even worse, the taking of the sexual agency of the person he loved the most. His entire life, his sword was his refuge. When he finally experienced true intimacy, this woman became his sword, and now his sword had been broken.